a good caveat in there for buying online. Thank you. So Catherine Dalzell answering a few questions for us today. The Air New Zealand video's out. Shortland Street's Jaden Daniels on a tiki tour of Northland. Speaking of the beauty of the North, as Julia was. Eliza McCartney's there and Rachel Hunter makes her return to the screen.
Hey, we've got room for one more and we've got ice creams.
Thanks, guys.
If the fasten seatbelt sign lights up, return to your seat and make it click. Belts fit low across your hips. You should really keep it on for the whole trip.
Are these really safety videos anymore? Do they fulfil that purpose much? What do you think?
No. What I did enjoy was the Wilder People kid. I loved him with Roman Keating. I loved
Oh,
that.
yeah, it's very good, isn't it?
But can I just say, I used to fly racehorses internationally up from New Zealand up to Hong Kong, and I loved it when I went first. My very first trip, there was a big cargo net between us with the horses and the pilot and co-pilot, and I said to him, "What's that for?" And when are we going to have our safety video? He said, "Well, that's it. There is no safety video." He said, "Because seriously, how many times do you survive?" And he said, "That cargo net is just to save, if anything happens, the horses and everything and you crashing through into the cockpit." So really...
You knew where you stood.
Yeah, we absolutely did know and we did have to stand. So we knew where we stood all right. But I just think they're a bit twee, to be honest.
There's some very good ones.
Oh, like I say, I love that kid. He's just gorgeous.
That's a branding exercise.
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it?
I mean,
are they all branding exercises rather than safety videos?
Probably.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, they are. I'm not in. I quite like them. The reality is that they're different. I get on lots of aeroplanes all over the world. They're all exactly the same and uninteresting, and nobody's. And I think make an effort, and it is a branding thing, and it gets quite a lot of publicity at the time for Air New Zealand, etc. Yeah, they're not all evenly good, though. No. The last one I think missed. Actually, I think when they try and build a narrative through it, which is what they did do, it does miss the safety aspect of it. Whereas
was that the Reece Darby one? Or
yeah,
what?
At least with this one, the safety part of it is front and centre. As I understand it, the requirement for those safety videos is, of course, to do with the FAA. The actual the requirement from World Airlines to deliver that kind of safety stuff. They don't have a choice, so why not zap it up a little bit?
It looks gorgeous, doesn't it? That
yes.
video going up north,
and it's used online. It's part of their marketing activity. It's all sorts of things.
Are we as gorgeous? When James Cameron first came here and said it's like being in New Zealand's like watching, an IMAX movie rolling at you. Excuse me. Are we keeping it like that? It looks fantastic in the Air New Zealand video. Are we is New Zealand as pretty as it was?
Well, I mean, I have to say it was gorgeous going up north. It really was. It was. I mean, the native bush. It was just gorgeous, and because you forget that when you're going I'm sorry, but going down the other way, it's just through Waikato, it's just not there. So
okay. Head north.
I think.
Be entranced.
Yeah, and the South Island. I mean, we're very beautiful. There's no getting away from it. Our beaches. We are. It's beautiful.
Julia Hartley-Moore, thank you for your company today.
You're welcome.
Michael Moynihan, you too.
Yes, nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to both of you. Thanks for listening, everybody. We are back tomorrow with the panel checkpoint following.
Kia ora everyone, it's been a heavy old week, so tonight we're going to have a bit of fun. If you consider being stuck in Auckland traffic, fun. Apologies to those of you who are. We're not making light of it. Also tonight, the solution to an altogether different sort of traffic problem, State Highway 1 and the main trunk line north and south of Kaikoura. The very unsentimental business of high performance sports funding. They'll show you the money if you show them the performance. The 9.5-year people trafficking sentence, and the latest from Aleppo, a great and beautiful city reduced in all ways. What is going to happen there now? All of that and much more, including the miraculous goldfish, after the beeps, the pips, and then Katrina.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good afternoon, ko Katrina Batanaho. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Murray McCully, will quit Parliament at next year's election. He'd already announced that he wouldn't be contesting the East Coast Bay's seat he's held since 1987. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Murray McCully is the third minister this week to announce his imminent departure, but unlike Sam Lotuinga and Craig Foss, Mr McCully is leaving it up to the Prime Minister Bill English whether or not he'll still be a minister after this weekend's reshuffle. Mr McCully says he wants to ensure New Zealand's international relationships have a smooth transition from the key government to the English government. He says how he might best contribute to that process is up to the Prime Minister. Earlier this year, he said he would only stay on as an MP as long as he had the Foreign Affairs portfolio. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
Kaikoura businesses have welcomed news that the government will rebuild the coastal route seriously damaged in last month's 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Cabinet's agreed to fund both the road and rail corridors at an estimated cost of up to $2 billion. The government will spend a further $5 million on restoring the Kaikoura harbour, which can currently only be used at high tide. The co-owner of Seal Swim, Vanessa Chambers, says she's ecstatic about today's news.
It's just fantastic news, really. To be honest, a lot of us haven't been thinking that far forward because it's still very much a day-to-day getting by thing here at the moment, but it's absolutely fantastic news. There's no way that we could have made it work without that infrastructure there.
A Kaikoura tourism operator, Vanessa Chambers. Scott Watson has been denied parole and won't be able to seek another hearing with the board until 2020. Watson is serving a life sentence for the killing of Olivia Hope and Ben Smart on New Year's Day in 1998. In a decision released today, the parole board said Watson had considerably more work to do before he no longer posed an undue risk. It said an experienced corrections officer who had known Watson for most of his sentence noted the split personalities of Watson, who could either be happy-go-lucky or very manipulative and very untrusting. The board said the person who killed Miss Hope and Mr Smart was a cold-blooded killer, and Mr Watson had been found to be that man beyond reasonable doubt. An Auckland business leader says the city's reputation is being hurt by huge airport delays and a new task force will not fix them. The task force is a joint effort by Auckland Transport, Auckland Airport and the New Zealand Transport Agency to try to stop crippling traffic jams in the lead up to the peak Christmas period. The group has already changed roundabouts and lane setups and altered traffic light timing. But the chief executive of the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, Michael Barnett, says these are not serious solutions. He says long-term fixes are needed, such as widening the main roads to the airport.
There's people like me who last Thursday left my Auckland office at about 4:30 and at 6:30 arrived at the airport. So these are the stories that are coming from tourists, business people, from New Zealanders that are trying to access, New Zealand's most livable city. Is it really?
The Auckland Chamber of Commerce head, Michael Barnett. Spark says it's working with the web company Yahoo to find out if its extra customers are impacted after 1 billion emails were hacked. Yahoo says the accounts may have been affected in a hacking attack dating back to 2013. Names, phone numbers, passwords and email addresses were stolen, but not bank or payments data. The communications provider Spark says customers who have changed their password since August 2013 are not likely to be affected, and those who haven't should do so now. Spark is in the process of dropping Yahoo as the provider of its extra mail service and moving to SMX. The Corrections Minister is still awaiting advice from her department over whether law changes are needed to clarify the way prison term and end dates are calculated. It follows a Supreme Court ruling that the department failed to factor in time spent in custody on remand when calculating release dates. Last month, in a bid to avoid paying compensation to prisoners held for too long, the Crown told the High Court that the Supreme Court ruling should only apply to future cases. However, Justice Simon France today ruled that would be a departure from the usual approach. At the time the Supreme Court decision, the former Prime Minister John Campbell said Parliament could pass retrospective legislation to rule out compensation payments. But Judith Collins' office says no decisions have yet been made about legislative change. It's 5 past 5. To sport, and Cycling New Zealand's relieved it didn't lose more than the $500,000 that's been lopped off their government funding for next year. New Zealand won just one cycling medal at the Rio Olympics, and as a result, High Performance Sport New Zealand has cut its funding of the sport by $500,000 to $4.2 million for each of the next 2 years. Cycling New Zealand's Chief Executive Andrew Matheson concedes it could have been worse.
I think the crucial thing for us is that review at the end of 18. We can get ourselves through without too much damage for the next 2 years, but we certainly will need more funding in 19 and 20 as we roll through to Tokyo.
Andrew Matheson. 31 different sports are represented in the nominations for Halberg Sports Awards. All Black Bowden Barrett, rally driver Hayden Padden, boxer Joseph Parker, rower Mahi Drysdale and runner Nick Willis are among the Sportsman of the Year nominees. The sportswoman nominees include golfer Lydia Ko, Olympic canoe gold medalist Lisa Carrington, shot putter Valerie Adams and pole vaulter Eliza McCartney. The All Blacks head the Team of the Year nominees, while rowing Rio medalists Sophie Pascoe and Liam Malone are the leading contenders for Paralympic Athlete of the Year. And Martin Snedden has resigned as head of Duco Events, the promoters of New Zealand heavyweight boxer Joseph Parker. That's the news.
An unusual Christmas parade.
Began about 56 years ago with a local man dressed up as Santa and another couple of women pushed him in a wheelbarrow. From there on it grew, and now we've got about 50 floats.
Spreading Christmas cheer.
Santa honey, ministerial spot, and that's not a lot. I've been an angel all year. Santa honey, sign up to Mighty Party tonight.
Let the festivities begin. Morning reports with Susie Ferguson and Guy and Espiner, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, Australian sex therapist Alison Rahn on baby boomer sexuality and the wants, needs and options for couples sleeping together in aged residential care. And after 10, original American punk rocker Tootie Cole from the Dead Moon, who's touring New Zealand with husband and bandmate Fred. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel, Peninsula and Bay of Plenty, mostly fine. However, a period of rain this evening. Waikato to Manawatu, including the central high country. Rain spreading north this afternoon and evening, then clearing tonight and becoming mostly fine. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, areas of cloud with a few spots of evening rain. It'll be fine tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, Wellington and Wairarapa becoming fine this afternoon. Northwest gales in exposed places easing before dawn. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury mostly fine, but the odd shower south of Rangiora today. Bulla to Fiordland, also Otago and Southland. Scattered showers, some heavy with hail and possible squally thunderstorms in the west and the far south today. Showers easing in Fiordland tomorrow but clearing elsewhere. And the Chatham Islands, rain developing this afternoon, then easing to showers tomorrow. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina. We have an encore from Marama Fox tonight for the sheer joy of it, really, after her wonderful performance in Parliament yesterday. That's coming up. Also coming up, we're in Kaikoura and the road and rail that runs north and south of it, and we are in Aleppo, of course, once one of the world's great ancient cities, now a kind of hell on earth. But first, after a week of social housing, its scarcity and its cost, we're changing tack completely tonight and beginning by taking to the road with the very inexact science of a live-to-air checkpoint experiment. Last Thursday, a week ago tonight, we were contacted by a listener who was stuck in traffic trying to get to Auckland Airport. Then the text started flooding in. More on that shortly. Since then, the story of getting to and from the airport in our largest city, and this isn't merely a domestic story because 17 million people passed through Auckland Airport last year, many of them foreign tourists, has become a huge talking point, so much so that a task force has been formed in an attempt to solve the problem. So, our reporter Alex Ashton has just left our office, which is right beside the motorway in the CBD, to head to the airport. How long will it take him? We'll join him shortly. Meanwhile, Rowan Quinn has been looking at what truly is a shambles and at some hastily made changes to try to improve it.
Roundabouts and lanes on the final approach to the airport have been reconfigured overnight and traffic light timings been changed to favour smooth flows towards the airport. Further out, the Transport Agency says it'll make changes to the lanes where State Highways 20A and B into the airport meet. And some of the hundreds of staff who work at the airport have been asked to change their driving habits so they don't add to the problem. The airport's chief executive, Adrian Littlewood, says the roadworks on State Highway 20A that are contributing to the problem will eventually help ease traffic, just not soon enough.
There was no doubt some people who were disappointed and upset about the traffic congestion that happened last week. It was an unusual event for us, but I don't think any of the transport agencies or us want to see that repeated. So we're making sure that the system is resilient enough to deal with those kind of very peak periods.
Perhaps no one's more familiar with the situation than Auckland's taxi drivers. Bob Naidu says the traffic's always bad on Thursdays and Fridays, and last week he had passengers get out and walk the last 2 kilometres to the terminal. Others had it worse.
Oh, they're really frustrated. They can't catch the flight on time and they have to pay more money to get onto the next flight. Even last Thursday, pilots could not go to the airport. I was taking one air crew girls. They missed the deadline time,
Another taxi driver, Chandra, says the problem's escalated in the last month and getting out of the airport can be just as bad.
Other day, it took me 25 minutes after dropping the person to the domestic terminal just to come to the 1 kilometres.
The chief executive of Auckland's Chamber of Commerce, Michael Barnett, says the new task force is just fiddling around at the edges of the problem, and he says even the major roadworks won't make a real difference once they're done. Mr Barnett wants a long-term solution, including widening state highways 20A and B to 4 lanes. Otherwise, he says the problem will get worse.
Look at the numbers and the way the numbers have increased with tourism being so successful over the last 5 years. Look at the commercial development that's taken place there of storage, the movement of goods and freight logistics. All of these things have grown and grown hugely, and what we've got is a greater number of people and cars and trucks that need to be moved.
He says rail and better public transport should be considered, but will take too long to solve the looming problems. Mr Barnett says Auckland's reputation is being hurt.
There's people like me who last Thursday left my Auckland office at about 4:30 and at 6:30 arrived at the airport. We tell our stories. So these are the stories that are coming from tourists, business people, from New Zealanders that are trying to access, New Zealand's most livable city. Is it really?
The Transport Agency wouldn't be interviewed on the issue, but in a statement said the problems weren't confined to the area around the airport and that flows around the city's whole transport network needed to improve. Jetstar says it's pleased to see progress being made, but is still advising people to aim to be at the airport 90 minutes before a domestic flight. I tāmaki makaurau mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi ko Rowan Quinn tēnei.
90 minutes. Now, last Thursday, after our first text from the traffic, we were bombarded with text messages from listeners stuck in that traffic on their way to the airport. We do suspect it was a particularly awful aberration. One listener told us people were ditching their cars and running to the airport with their luggage to catch their planes. Auckland Airport's Chief Executive, Adrian Littlewood, will speak to him after 6 o'clock about that task force, which does seem to have had an immediate impact. But he told us if we're wanting to reach Auckland Airport before a 6:30 flight tonight, we should leave the city by 5. Do the taxi companies agree? Our producer Bridget Burke called to find out.
Welcome, Corporate Cabs.
Bridget here. I just wondered how much it is for a cab from Auckland City to the airport, please.
Depending on traffic, it'll be approximately around $80. Could be a little bit more depending on traffic.
Okay, and if I need to make a flight of 6:30, what time should I leave?
The flight leaves at 6:30?
Yes.
Domestic or international?
Domestic.
So you're going to be there in about 6, so maybe 5 to be safe, or maybe 10 to 5.
Discount taxis. I just wondered if you could quote me a fare from Auckland City to the airport, please.
$40 in a car, $50 in a van.
I need to be at the airport by 6:30. What time should I book the cab for?
I would say no later than 5:15. Is that in the evening or the morning?
This is in the evening today, yeah.
Yeah. I would say 5:15, I would say. Oh, well, you could go for 5:30, but you never know sometimes with the traffic.
Gosh, that does seem to be leaving it tight. So that would be half an hour or 3/4 of an hour to get there for check-in.
I reckon you'd be better off going at either 5 or 5:15.
You wish to book a taxi?
Yes, how much would it cost to go from Auckland City to the airport?
Ma'am, normal fare would be between $60 to $70, but all depends on the traffic.
So with the traffic, if I need to catch a 6:30 flight this evening, what time should I leave?
6:30 flight, you'd be looking at 6 o'clock check-in time. I would say no later than 5, ma'am.
Bridget Burke talking to cab companies. Interesting to see discount was $40, corporate was $80, but this is Radio New Zealand, and even at $40 we can't afford those prices. So we sent Alex Ashton and Bradley White, our cameraman, to the airport in Radio New Zealand News' Hyundai. We co-opted it for the evening. They took Adrian Littlewood's advice and left at 5 o'clock. Alex is joining us now live from the car. Alex, where are you?
Hello, John. We are on Manukau Road, making what is exceptional progress. We've got off to a positively flying start.
You're going like Ayrton Senna, brother. This is completely...
Yeah,
this is kind of blowing our experiment, really, because that's great progress, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, coming out of Radio New Zealand, I think you mentioned it before, there's basically a straight 2 minutes to walk, sometimes in peak traffic takes 10 minutes to drive just to get on the motorway. We basically got through that in 30 seconds, got straight off at Gillies Avenue and then going along Manukau Road. A little bit of traffic around Gillies, but we're not going to be jumping out and running at this rate, John.
No, you're not. You're just going, you're near the racecourse here, are you, Alex? Just opposite the racecourse, going past Toledo Cinema. Oh, no, you're making a decent progress. Could you?
Near Green Lane.
Yeah.
I know. You wouldn't even think it's rush hour, but
no,
who knows?
Okay.
We're not there yet, so...
Okay, well, we'll check back in with you. Thanks so much, Alex. Alex Ashton, who is driving and coming into us via live view. It's the first time we've done that. A picture from a moving car, and it worked rather wonderfully. We'll return to that a bit later. Now to some more serious news. They were promised high wages, free food and accommodation, but instead they were paid just a fraction of what they were promised and forced to live in squalid, cramped conditions. Feroz Ali, the man who promised the migrants everything, only to exploit them, today became the first person in New Zealand to be sentenced for people trafficking. Justice Heath sentenced Ali to 9.5 years in prison for 57 charges, including people trafficking, which he described as an abhorrent crime. Our Auckland court reporter Edward Gay filed this report.
Feroz Ali headed an organisation that ran advertisements in a Fijian newspaper promising people orchard and construction work in New Zealand at 7 or 8 times their pay in the Pacific nation. They were charged exorbitant fees to travel to New Zealand, but when they arrived they were forced to sleep on the floor and had rent and food costs deducted from their pay. Many returned to their homes in Fiji out of pocket and owing their friends and community hundreds of dollars. Suliana Vetanivula was one of the workers. Her victim impact statement was read by the Crown Prosecutor Luke Clancy.
When I go out, I feel ashamed to see the people I owe in my village. When I came to them for help, they were ready to help me, and in return I didn't do my part. When I returned to the village, I felt like I was not wanted anymore, like everybody sees me as a failure. It was like I stole money from them, because they know that whoever goes to Australia or New Zealand to work, they always come back with a lot of money.
Mr. Clancy said Ali had expressed no remorse whatsoever and owed the workers $128,000 in fees and outstanding wages. He said that figure didn't include the profit Ali made from their labour. Ali's lawyer Peter Broad said his client had no money available and was facing bankruptcy after being pursued by the Inland Revenue Department for a $126,000 tax bill. Justice Heath said some of the workers were sent to the Bay of Plenty for orchard work, where the accommodation was shamefully poor.
3 married women and 1 married man were taken to a house near Pies Pa and told they would be staying in the basement with other people. There was no bedding to speak of and only 1 mattress was available. This in July 2014, in the midst of a New Zealand winter. That must have been extremely cold for people travelling from the tropical warmth of Fiji.
In sentencing Ali, the judge ordered him to pay reparation of $28,000 to refund the fees the workers paid.
People trafficking is an abhorrent crime. It is a crime against human dignity. It undermines the respect that all of us should have for the human rights and the autonomy of individual people. Such conduct degrades human life. It is a crime that should be condemned in the strongest possible terms.
Outside court Stand Against Slavery Chief Executive Peter Mihaere said exploitation is widespread.
This is the tip of the iceberg, it really is, and I think what's nice about this judgment is that it firmly and squarely says it's happening here and we're actually prosecuting and we're charging and people are going to prison as a result of it. So I think this is a good start, and if there's anything I'd want to say is if you are a victim out there, you really need to talk to the authorities.
Mr Mihaere said the sentence shows people who are being exploited can have confidence in authorities and come forward. Immigration New Zealand Assistant General Manager Peter Devoy agrees.
That is the stance we take. People can come forward and we can listen to their plight. We will certainly take it seriously, but we are targeting those who are exploiting the vulnerable.
Ali's co-defendant Jafar Kurisi had also admitted exploiting workers and was to be sentenced today, but was taken to Tauranga Hospital after an emergency this morning. He'll be sentenced in Tauranga in February. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Edward Gay aho.
I don't know if you are watching, you will have seen an extra person in our control room tonight. Can we have that shot again? There. And Soonlee, I want you to turn to your left, your extreme left, and wave past Pip at the camera. That is Soonlee, who is one of the great proponents of Cooking with John, which is a Twitter hashtag, and night after night is a rather glorious companion with us as he cooks his dinner and tweets about it and listens to us. He's come in to join us tonight. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, he's sitting in the control room and watching the program go to air. It's lovely to have you with us soon. Coming up on the program, Swimming New Zealand pays a very real financial price for no medals at Rio. This is high performance sport New Zealand. There is nothing sentimental about the way they allocate money. We'll talk to them shortly. Kaikoura businesses welcome news the government will rebuild the coastal road and rail route, and a survival story off the scale. House Swim-A-Lot survived the best part of a month unfed and alone in a Wellington apartment block. A remarkable goldfish. Of course, he has no idea that he's a remarkable goldfish. We'd love to hear from you in any way you choose. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet at Checkpoint RNZ. We're on Facebook, of course, and our email address is checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. Thank you for being with us as we begin to wind down for the year. But we are not with this next story. We're going to Aleppo now. We're just about, well, it's hard to imagine a tougher, more brutal, bleaker, sadder place. And about now, as we speak, the long-awaited evacuation of civilians and rebel fighters is, we believe, getting underway. It's a coordinated operation and will only happen if there's a similar evacuation of civilians from villages close to Aleppo that are currently controlled by rebels. After an earlier ceasefire and evacuation plan broke down yesterday, the bombing and killing began again. This time the people of Aleppo hope they will be at last freed from what truly is a living nightmare. The BBC's Lise Doucette reports.
A rare quiet became another day of war, shattering a ceasefire only hours after it started, and crushing a bit of hope that the agony of Aleppo was over. Especially for those still trapped in what's left of their homes in the east of the city.
All the people were, let's say, psyched and happy with the agreement about leaving and evacuating the city finally. And they were just preparing themselves, and they think that the regime is going to take a ground force.
Today, 47 orphans sent a message to the world.
Please let us evacuate Aleppo. We can't go outside because of the airstrikes and the shelling. We are afraid. We would really like you to help us leave Aleppo. We want to live like everyone else.
This morning, before first light, the buses, the ambulances did move in, ready to bring out the ill and the injured, the children, the fighters. But the first ambulance was turned back by a pro-government militia. And the buses waited for hours. More than 100,000 people escaped this hellish corner in recent weeks, fleeing under fire, a brutish existence, a victory just to survive. Many did not. The UN is now raising concern about alleged massacres of civilians, a grave accusation dismissed today by President Assad.
If we liberate Aleppo from the terrorists, there would be, the Western officials and the mainstream media, they're going to be worried about the civilians. They're not worried when the opposite happens, when the terrorists killing those civilians.
State TV shows what they say is the evidence, a weapons factory captured during the army's offensive. The rockets rebels have been firing into West Aleppo. It's why it's been so hard to reach a deal to let the fighters go.
All these crimes that they have committed, after all bombing the old city of Aleppo through explosive tunnels, robbing, looting factories, no one likes to see those after killing 11,000 civilians in the western parts of Aleppo. No one likes to see them just go.
So the fight goes on, but there are reports a new deal is done, that rebels will leave, that an evacuation of civilians will at last happen, and that this brutal battle for Aleppo may, just may, be over.
That's the BBC's Lise Doucette. The moment we get confirmation the evacuation is actually happening, we will let you know. A lack of a medal or, in fact, a placing in the pool, in fact, a position in the finals at the pool at the 2016 Olympics has proved costly for New Zealand swimming, with the organisation losing $400,000 in funding for next year. High Performance Sport New Zealand today released its funding for next year largely based on Olympic results, although that's not the only criteria for assessment. And while there are funding boosts for Yachting New Zealand, athletics and canoe racing, our national triathlon and swimming programs will have some hard decisions to make following big cuts. Swimming New Zealand declined to be interviewed today, seeking clarification from High Performance Sport New Zealand on its funding cut. I asked High Performance Sport NZ CEO Alex Baumann via Skype if there's room to reconsider.
That's a full and final decision. The 900K committed for 2 years. I mean, we can clarify how we reached that decision and we can have that discussion with them. But it's gone from 1.3 million to 900,000 based on the fact that the performances in Rio, not one swimmer made the final. And also some of the key milestones as well. Now, having said that, I think they've moved a long way in the last 18 months, but the focus has to be on the National Training Center and the head coach for swimming to try to develop that center of excellence where athletes actually want to compete and train. So that's a final figure, but we can have that discussion.
Right. I want to go back to what you gave them previously. You gave them $1.3 million, right?
Correct.
Okay, and they didn't get a swimmer into the finals at Rio. In other words, doesn't that tell you something about the cause and effect and what an inexact science this is? They were heftily backed. It didn't work out. Your money didn't work there, did it?
Well, in terms of the investment, I mean, there's 4 criteria that we take a look at. One is past performance, which would be in Rio, and obviously the last 4 years as well. They've had some good results in World Championships, obviously with Lauren winning World Championship medals in the last 3 years leading into the Games. But we take a look at future potential. We take a look at the quality of the high performance program. And finally, we take a look at the individual context of the sport. And that just means that some sports are more expensive than others, team sports versus individual sports. So those are the 4 criteria that we take a look at. So past historical performance is one of those criteria. It's an important one, there's no doubt, because the Olympics are important. And ultimately, our goal was 14 plus medals. We have to take a look at sports that can help us reach that goal. We have 16 plus for Tokyo.
So obviously your job is to back winners, and that makes absolute sense. But it strikes me, looking at who got less money and who got more money, that you kind of make those decisions after the fact, don't you? I mean, wouldn't it be better to get it right in advance?
Well, no, I don't think we back them after the fact. Obviously, as I said, that's one of the criteria. But it's not an exact science, but we take a look at what the potential is for the future, because I believe that if you're going to have a world-leading system, you have to have sustainability. So it's not only for the next pinnacle event or for Tokyo, it's beyond that. It's supporting some athletes. And with the tier 1 sports, tier 2 sports, we go down below 4 years, 4 to 8 years to podium. So we're supporting athletes 8 years away from podium.
Okay, so sustainability and also accountability, right? Because you don't want to give money to people who aren't providing a meaningful return on investment.
Yes.
I guess there are some people who did better than you had expected them to because they have had an increase in the funding they're getting from you. Who are the big examples of that?
Well, certainly yachting and athletics. So if you take a look at yachting, their goal was 2 medals. They got 4 out of 7 boats that competed at the Olympic Games. And there's a pipeline of athletes that are doing very, very well. So they're pretty well set for 2020. Obviously, coaching is a priority for them. Athletics, you could say that they overperformed. Again, their goal was 2 medals. They got 4. They got some good young athletes, obviously, Eliza, Tom Walsh, Jack O'Gill as well. They have some depth, and there's some other athletes in pole vault and shot put that are coming up as well. So they've done very well. They moved from a tier 2 sport to a tier 1 sport, and the investment increases. The third sport, I guess, is canoe racing, where obviously Lisa's exploits have been outstanding at the Olympic Games. She'll be going on to 2020. And there are some other female athletes that are in the fray in terms of the K4, where they finished 5th in Rio, which was an outstanding result. So we see a lot of potential. They will centralize in Karapiro at the end of 2017. And perhaps the final one is Paralympics. Paralympics did an outstanding job.
Yeah, they had a wonderful games, yeah.
Yeah. And so they have an increase as well.
Okay. Can we talk about rowing? Bond and Murray going, is that part of the decision to give rowing less money?
Not really. I think, yes, agree that, some of those athletes are taking a sabbatical, which they can do. In rowing, they can come back. That's been proven. But it's more that, they didn't reach their target. 5 medals was a target. They still did well with 2 gold medals and 1 silver, and second on the medal table, tied for second in the medal table in rowing, because more countries won medals. It was a bit more difficult. But there's some changes that had to happen. If you compare it to 2015 World Championship results, they are disappointed that they didn't get to the 5. So the 200 is just an indication that they did well. It really is a small decrease, given that they had 5.3 million. It goes to 5.1 million, but they'll have to cut their cloth accordingly.
Gosh, this is a matter of fact, isn't it? And kind of unsentimental. I mean, you and I are talking very rationally about money and performance and return on investment. And if we think of the beginnings of the Olympics as an amateur sport and people running around nude in Greece and all that kind of stuff, what you're saying actually is we've got a finite amount of money and we want some bang for our buck.
We have to, and we're very fortunate that the government has supported to the tune of $66 million. But it's a top-down approach. We have a goal of 16 plus for Tokyo, 10 to 14 gold medals on the Paralympic front, and winning world championships in non-Olympic sports. And I don't believe in distributing the funds so equally that it actually doesn't make a difference. So there's going to be winners and losers, but it is a performance-based approach, and there is accountability, and we shouldn't shy away from that. We have to make some hard calls.
It's Alex Bauman from High Performance Sport New Zealand. We're all discussing this. We'd love your feedback on it. Text 2101. Unsentimental, and they want to back winners. What do you think? And at Checkpoint RNZ on Twitter, email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. After the headlines at 5:30, we're talking business with Nona. We're going to catch up with Alex, who's going so fast I want someone to pull him over and give him a ticket on his trip to the airport. And we're also talking about the living wage for Wellington City Council workers and an extraordinary story of survival in an off-limits Wellington City apartment. All of that and more in the next 26 minutes. But first, Katrina with the headlines.
The Foreign Affairs Minister Murray McCully will quit Parliament at next year's election. He'd already announced he wouldn't be contesting the East Coast Bay seat he's held since 1987. And today he said he would not be available for a list position either. Murray McCully is the third minister this week to announce their imminent departure. Kaikoura businesses have welcomed the government's announcement it will rebuild the coastal route, seriously damaged in last month's 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Cabinet's agreed to fund both the road and rail corridors in an estimated cost of up to $2 billion. Both Whale Watch Kaikoura and Seal Swim say it's good news. An Auckland business leader says the city's reputation is being hurt by huge traffic jams around the airport, and a new task force won't fix them. The group has already changed roundabouts and lane setups and altered traffic light timing. But the chief executive of the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, Michael Barnett, says long-term fixes are needed, such as widening the main roads to the airport. In a decision released today, Scott Watson has been denied parole and won't be able to seek another hearing until 2020. Watson is serving a life sentence for the killing of Olivia Hope and Ben Smart on New Year's Day in 1998. Spark is working with the web company Yahoo to find out if its extra customers are impacted after 1 billion emails were hacked. Yahoo says the accounts may have been affected in a hacking attack dating back to 2013. ANZ staff evacuated their Tory Street offices in central Wellington today over fears concrete panelling on the building could fall off. The Wellington City Council says it's put up a temporary cordon across Foresters Lane. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. Business news now with Nona Peltier. Kiwis love their chicken. Nona, by golly. Changing preferences, though, having an impact on sales of 2 New Zealand-listed companies. And also, I'm really looking forward to the Fed because we've been previewing this
That's right.
all year.
We got some good stuff to talk about. Well, let's see.
Okay, start with chicken.
We'll start with the chicken. So we've had a couple of companies report financial data today. Restaurant Brands, their sales numbers tripled in the most recent quarter.
Tripled?
Yeah.
Year on year? Or no, quarter on quarter?
Yeah, no, it could be year on year. Let's see, might have been, double check. Well, anyways, it's a big increase. And I
want to speculate here, and this could be wrong, and I look forward to feedback from everyone on this, but restaurant brands recently have had a lot of good publicity around the treatment of their staff.
Well, yes, because they're paying them.
KFC, yeah, that's right. Permanent contracts, people know where they stand, all of that stuff. And it's been a lot of good publicity. I wonder if people, I don't know, have people been going to KFC?
Eating more chicken as a result? I'm not sure because could be, the Australian, they've bought a franchise in New South Wales, and that's contributed quite a lot to their new increased growth there. Right. So, no, people love the chicken, especially if it's already cooked. Now, on the other side of the ledger here is the unprocessed raw material that is produced by Tegel chicken. So Tegel, they did a very good first half result, more than double the year earlier. But the market wasn't happy because they're going to miss their forecast for the full year. And
so revenue up, sales up, but
margins lower.
Right.
And the reason why, so they're selling more chicken, but they're making less money off of it. And so why is that? The chief executive thinks it could be that basically preferences have changed. Now, I did some reading on the OECD website, and believe it or not, chicken. Yes, indeed, chicken. And it turns out that people have changed their preference for the kinds of cuts they like. So instead of, the breast and the thigh, they're going for the cheaper cuts of the wing and the drum.
Right.
And so those lower valued pieces potentially, I guess, affect their margins. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure, but hey, we've got a bit from Phil Hand, and he was talking about when it comes to chicken, it comes down to price.
I guess from a pricing point of view, I've seen in certain segments of the market and certain products quite sensitive pricing. It is pretty tough out there at the moment, and there's good competition at the retail level, and I guess that's good for consumers. I think the market might even be changing a wee bit, and people's consumption habits changing a wee bit as well.
And that was Phil Hand. They were talking this morning at the investor conference. He didn't give us an interview, though, so right. I can't say much more than that. But in any case, look, I have to tell you, the U.S. Federal Reserve, in fact, did raise interest rates today. Yes, indeed, between, so from a quarter of a percentage point to between 50 and 0.50 and 0.75. So it's still under 1% there. Yeah. But never mind, the market was excited about that, not so much because of the interest rate hike itself, but because the U.S. Federal Reserve is looking to raise interest rates over the next couple of years up until 3% by the end of 2019. Wow. So that really made the dollar take a bit of a hike, and of course, not surprising, the New Zealand dollar, but only a cent, which isn't a lot against the US when you consider how much it's moved to a 14-year high. So the New Zealand dollar is trading at 71 US cents, 95.6 Australian and 56.6 pence. And on the share market, the Eagles share price closed down almost 17% as a result of that revised down forecast to $1.29. The top 50 index then fell about 0.5%, or by 49 points to 6,749.
Our Auckland business reporter Nona Peltier. Thank you, Nona. Speaking of Auckland, let's go back to Alex Ashton, who, as part of our experiment, left the CBD 40 minutes ago exactly. Now, to drive to Auckland Airport. We thought he would take an interminably long time, maybe an hour, maybe more, because the traffic to and from Auckland Airport is so bad. Alex, I can see where you are, but I would like you to break the news to our listeners.
John, I am sitting here at 5:41 waiting in the drop-off part of Auckland's domestic airport. So we left at 5 o'clock on the dot, and actually we've been here for a couple of minutes, so we could probably be checked into our imaginary 6:30 flight by now.
I can't believe it. You went so fast there should have been a sonic boom. Was there no traffic at all?
Well, there was a little bit going over Gillies and a tiny bit on the motorway. I can assure you we were going 50k on the dot in the 50k's and 100k and 80k speed limits to the T. But I don't know what it is. Maybe whoever's on this task force, I don't know the details, but they obviously hold the key to Auckland's traffic woes just by being formed.
Right, Alex, you're not catching a flight because obviously we can't afford flights. So can you? Would you mind driving back to Radio New Zealand and we'll time? So if you depart now at 5:41, we'll time your trip back and we'll see how we go. But
fantastic.
But
all right, it's 5:42.
Okay, excellent. Drive carefully, Alex, and we'll talk to you shortly. Alex Ashton, who got to Auckland Airport so fast that all the stories about how difficult it is to get to and from Auckland Airport have just been really destroyed in a single 40-minute journey. It's starting to rain, we can see from Alex's windscreen, but it is Auckland and it hasn't rained for a few hours, so that seems apt. Right. The possibility of a living wage of more than $20 an hour is a step closer for thousands of Auckland council workers. Councillors have solidly backed putting out the proposal for public feedback as it works on next year's annual budget. The move would cost ratepayers up to $9 million a year. That's to pay for everyone to have a living wage. Our Auckland correspondent Todd Niall has been looking at this.
2,200 council staff work for less than the so-called living wage, $20.40 an hour. 1,200 more could get smaller pay rises to stay in step. Auckland's previous Mayor Len Brown pulled the plug on its possible introduction 3 years ago, but the new Mayor Phil Goff campaigned on making it happen.
I know cleaners work bloody hard and they do a job that we need to have, but are we really saying to people, yeah, we'd like you to be able to live decently, but actually that's not our priority?
Councillor Efeso Collins represents some of Auckland's poorest residents in the Otaura Papatoetoe ward and says a living wage would particularly help Pacifica families.
Home ownership rates amongst Pacific families is below 30%. So whilst home ownership is a major issue for Auckland, it has been an issue for Pacific families since we arrived in New Zealand in the 1960s. It is high time that we started to address these issues.
Councillor Linda Cooper says public consultation needs to spell out the possible consequences. She says it could cost the council agency running facilities such as the zoo and concert venues more than $1 million.
Does that mean that they actually, put the prices up for families going to the zoo? They can't feed the animals less. Do we raise ticket prices for shows and events? Do we raise venue higher costs?
The initial plan would be to phase the wage in over 3 years for staff at the council and its agencies. An opponent, Councillor Dick Quacks, says the next step could have serious consequences.
When this is extended to contractors, as it eventually will be, we will knock small contractors, small employers out of business. If they have to pay a living wage, they will not be able to do business with this council.
The Auckland Council is one of the city's biggest employers, and the living wage has further hurdles to clear. PSA union organiser Jeff Rowe, who watched today's vote, says it's a positive move, and getting the council to adopt the higher minimum wage would be significant.
At the moment, it's largely small businesses that are paying the living wage, and they're doing fine. It's not hurting them at all. To pull that up to council level would just be a great example.
Public consultation on the council budget happens early next year, with a final decision in May. I tāmaki makoro mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi ko taudnail tēnei.
Let's head to Wellington now, where about 70 residents were allowed into an off-limits Central City apartment block today to retrieve some of their precious belongings after the best part of a month, including, believe it or not, a hungry but very much alive goldfish. Each resident had about 20 minutes to get in and out of the Maison Cabriolet, apologies because I've almost certainly said that wrong, apartments near the quake-damaged Reading Cinema car park building, which has been off limits for almost a month. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Central City, the cordons along Molesworth Street were reduced and some businesses were able to reopen. Michael Kropp checked in to see how everyone is going.
Escorted by urban search and rescue workers, residents donned hard hats and fluoro jackets before going into their apartments to retrieve what they could carry. Birth certificates, passports, computers, clothes and a coffee machine were among the must-have items. But for Brittany Goderich, it was Sir Swims-a-Lot, her goldfish, that came first.
My little goldfish who hasn't been fed for like a month, but he's still alive, so he deserved to be saved. That's what I thought, so... yeah.
What's its name?
Sir Swims-a-Lot.
And what was the state of his tank?
It was gross. It was like green and slimy and smelly, and so big cleaning job now.
Finn Wardle and Hayley Salmon told me some of what they'd retrieved.
Just pretty much clothes, stuff like food that's been in the fridge, the necessities, socks, makeup.
It felt like we had ages, so we just started getting other stuff like wine that was in the fridge and like bedding, like our duvets, because we're moving into a new flat.
But Mr. Wardle says he's out of pocket and his insurance company is being blasé about it.
We can't get insurance on where we're staying, like to pay back where we're staying, because our building's not damaged. So they're like, that's how they're getting through the loophole. They're like, well, your building's fine, so we're not going to pay you out for all the expenses you have to pay a new accommodation.
Nick Pyatt, the Fire Services Assistant Area Commander, is overseeing the operation.
Our role today is to provide support and a bit of capacity for the Wellington City Council, so we're coordinating access into buildings. We're giving the tenants that we take in some assurance that should something happen, that they'll be looked after and accounted for. And also, should the worst happen, we're on site ready to get into action straight away.
The council says it hopes to get a crane to the car park tomorrow and the demolition should start in early January. They'll use the machine that's currently nibbling away at an office block on 61 Molesworth Street where the cordon shrank today. Freeman's bookshop reopened this morning and its owners Lorraine and Tony Freeman say it's been a quiet start. Mrs. Freeman hopes sales pick up soon because they've lost tens of thousands of dollars.
The worst thing is because we have a lot of Christmas stock in here and it all arrives in November and it's due for payment in December, but we haven't got the December sales to pay for that stock.
Derek Williams, the ringing master at the Anglican Cathedral on Molesworth Street, says he's pretty desperate to get back in to ring the bells.
Bells are a very important part of Christmas. People traditionally associate bells and Christmas. So yeah, we're very glad that we can get back and very grateful that they've got on with the demolition.
In Wellington for Checkpoint, call Michael Kropp tēnei.
Let's go across to Kaikoura from Wellington. Businesses have welcomed news that the government will rebuild that coastal road and rail route, State Highway 1, of course, seriously damaged in last month's 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Cabinet's agreed to fund both State Highway 1 and the rail corridor at an estimated cost of up to $2 billion. And as Katie Gossett reports, another $5 million will be spent restoring Kaikoura Harbour to get the town's tourism operators, most famously, of course, Whale Watch Kaikoura, back on their feet.
Good news has been long overdue for Kaikoura residents, and the co-owner of Seal Swim, Vanessa Chambers, says she's ecstatic about today's announcement.
It's just fantastic news, really. To be honest, a lot of us haven't been thinking that far forward because it's still very much a day-to-day getting by thing here at the moment, but it's absolutely fantastic news. There's no way that we could have made it work without that infrastructure there.
She says many in the town are still struggling with the basics, grappling with insurance woes.
I'm sure all the insurance places are doing their best, but obviously any amount of uncertainty when it comes to people's homes and livelihoods some people are dealing with issues that involve both their homes and their livelihood, so they've got young families and stuff. It's not nice to think about, really.
The General Manager of Whale Watch, Kawahi Napura, is also pleased the roading infrastructure will be reinstated, but a greater concern has been the limits on the Kaikoura harbour. The quake caused the seabed to rise up by 2 metres, and that's meant Whale Watch can only operate at high tide, just 3 hours of the day. Mr Napura says the government's $5 million grant to help restore the harbour will help many local operators.
Not only us, but the dolphin boats, also a lot of the fishermen, they can't get out only at the high tide. So it's really important for all of our businesses and also the community that we can start to use that marina at all tides.
The impact of today's announcement has also been felt down the road in Cheviot, where 80% of Debbie Anderson's business dried up overnight. Her Two Rivers Cafe relies on tourists and passing traffic, and while she always believed the road would be rebuilt, she says it's good to have it confirmed.
It's hugely important. We need it to keep our businesses going. So it was the right decision. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
The government expects to have the route open in a year, and it will fall to the Transport Agency to do the job. A spokesperson, Pete Connors, says working in a narrow corridor in earthquake-prone country will be difficult, and there'll be a workforce of several hundred. But he's confident the agency will deliver within the deadline.
Obviously, it's going to be a challenging job, but we're up for the challenge, and the government's looking for a stronger and more resilient route. So that requires some good engineering judgment in terms of the solutions that we're going to have to sort in this area.
In the meantime, the Transport Agency will work on maintaining the alternative route through the Lewis Pass to keep traffic moving. In Canterbury for Checkpoint, Katie Gossett.
It's 8.5 minutes to 6. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Thank you for being with us. A judge says he exercised compassion when he let a father and grandfather off over the accidental drowning of a toddler in an inflatable swimming pool on Christmas Day in 2014, 2 years ago. James Mataafi was discharged without conviction for the manslaughter of his 17-month-old daughter, Imogen and Mosala Saliupolo. His manslaughter charge also was dropped. Our reporter, Carla Penman, was at the High Court in Auckland.
Christmas morning changed forever for the Mataafi family in 2014 when an inflatable pool was set up in the backyard for the children to play in. The atmosphere at the Manurewa house was happy. Children were laughing and there was no sense of danger in the air as Christmas lunch was being prepared. Justice Peter Woodhouse said there were 7 adults and a nephew over the age of 18 around that day, and it was assumed that someone was supervising the children swimming. He said the dreadful tragedy unfolded as the 17-month-old's grandfather was cooking on the barbecue, his back turned half a metre from the pool. Justice Woodhouse said the last Mr Mataafi saw of his youngest daughter was when she said hello and gave him a kiss. A short while later, she was pulled from the pool by her grandfather and CPR attempts were unsuccessful. He said it's not known how the toddler got into the pool, but a pushchair was found beside it, suggesting she might have climbed or fallen in. Dabbed eyes and sighs of relief came from the dock and the public gallery before the pair walked out of court, hugging family. Outside court, their lawyer Ron Mansfield said it was a great relief for the men.
They're a very humble and quiet family. They're not outspoken or angry. They've taken it in their stride and have realised that part of the process really involves ensuring other people learn from what happened to them.
Mr Mansfield says the public might see the outcome as unconventional, but it's compassionate. The police are defending laying the charges 16 months after the toddler's death, saying the decision to prosecute was made after a lengthy investigation. As of January the 1st next year, new legislation relating to pools will come into effect. It will give councils more authority to enforce that pools with depths of more than 40 centimetres have fences. Chris Kane from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment says their aim is to save lives.
The changes are actually very minimal because there is already a requirement to have a barrier if your pool's over 400 millimetres deep. That's already there. So more than anything, it's just about getting someone in to have a look at it once every 3 years.
He says it's a small cost to prevent tragedies such as Imogen Mataafi's from happening. For Checkpoint, ko Carla Penman tēnei.
A row has broken out in the far north over moves by a local game fishing club to charge for the use of its boat ramp. Boaties who object say the club's on reserve land and it has to give the public free access to the harbour. But the club says its new resource consent allows it to charge and to keep out unwanted cars. Lois Williams reports.
Fiona Farrell and her husband keep a boat up at Hohora, and like hundreds of others, they've always used the boat ramp at Monkey Point. The ramp was built on council reserve in the early 90s by the Hohora Big Game and Sport Fishing Club, along with a jetty and some fairly flash club rooms. Not everyone was happy about that. Monkey Point was the community's favourite swimming and picnic spot. But in exchange for a peppercorn lease, the club agreed to provide permanent vehicle access via the boat ramp and free public passage to the beach.
The resource consent has considerable number of conditions in it, and this is one of them. It is a public amenity that has been built, and they are to maintain for the public due to the fact that they obviously have a very cheap, if nothing lease cost on their fishing club that they've built there.
But the Game Fishing Club now wants to install a barrier arm across the ramp, provide swipe cards to its members and sell swipe cards to the general public to use the ramp. The president, Justin Kernan, says the club spends a lot of money maintaining the ramp and other facilities and needs to recoup some of it.
The members are the ones that pay for everything and pay for the upkeep of the facility that we have up there. But we've got to the stage where the public at times are more of a hindrance than a help to us with the ramp. And what happens is we even get to the stage where members are sort of saying, well, why am I being a member when everyone else can use the facilities for absolutely nothing?
The Far North District Council says according to the original resource consent, the Hohora Club still has to provide free vehicle access to the public. But Mr Kernan believes that's no longer the case.
It actually says that they have to have access, which they do have, but we don't necessarily have to supply access with a car and a boat. As long as they can, walk to the water's edge, then that's the access to the riparian right, I suppose, or whatever it's called. But we don't have to supply drive-through access.
A club member who resigned over the ramp row, Carl Dennison, says as he understands it, that's correct. A more recent resource consent has been granted by the Northland Regional Council. Mr Dennison says it was non-notified and makes no mention of public access.
So basically the public's gone from having free access over the whole lot of it to the stroke of a pen, and only 5 people basically knowing about it, 3 people from the Game Fish Club and 2 people from the Northland Regional Council. Those 5 people made the decision to delete the public's rights to access to it.
But the Northland Regional Council says that's not correct. Its regulatory manager, Colin Dell, says the boat ramp was built on the coastal marine area, and that means, whatever the club thinks, it can't stop the public using it, either in cars or on foot. The council's sending a staff member and a councillor along to what could be a rather heated meeting at the Hohora Game Fishing Club this evening. For Checkpoint, Lois Williams.
Thanks, Lois. Coming up to 2 minutes to 6, lots of feedback coming in, and we're going to bring you a sample. We did have a slightly eccentric experiment tonight because the traffic going to and from Auckland Airport has indisputably been truly abysmal. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So we sent Alex Ashton to go and cover how abysmal it was, and it wasn't. It was actually magnificent, and he got there so quickly that it's almost like he levitated. So we've got a very lovely listener who has explained it. John, given colleges and private schools, etc., so basically everyone except primary school students, have recessed for this year already, that will be why the road to the airport is quieter. Thank you. You're a lovely listener, and it makes us feel much better. This person says, Jenny says the day the car is passed, remove the problem. Roads are not the answer. Get a train from the central city to the airport. Start now. Of course, there is no train. One goes as far as Onehunga, but boy, that's a wee way away, and there's some water to cross. No train line to the airport. Someone else says the secret of coping with Auckland motorway traffic is to leave early, not rush, not look for stress, turn Radio New Zealand up loud and get there safely. Thank you, Henare, for that excellent advice. Now, we have a thing whereby I cue for the sting by giving the boys a look. So I'm about to do it now. Here's the look. No sting, though. look was just so powerful. Put them off. After 6, ANZ bank staff evacuated the Tory Street offices in central Wellington today over fears their concrete panelling on the building could fall off. Our reporter Michael Kropp is there. We'll go live to him. A new task force created to help combat heavy traffic around Auckland Airport, which has disappeared tonight. We're going to look at actually what caused the gridlock. A rendition of Santa Baby by Marama Fox in Parliament with her co-leader Te Ururua Flavel on the ukulele has gone absolutely global, and for good reason. It's delightful, but she'll sing something else for us after 6.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. The New Zealand Transport Agency says rebuilding the coastal route to Kaikoura will be challenging and require several hundred workers, but it's confident the job can be done within the next 12 months. Today, the government committed up to $2 billion to rebuild part of State Highway 1 and the rail corridor damaged in last month's major earthquake. The agency spokesperson, Pete Connors, says there'll be difficult sites to work on.
Obviously, it's going to be a challenging job, but we're up for the challenge, and the government's looking for a stronger and more resilient route. So that requires some good engineering judgment in terms of the solutions that we're going to have to sort in this area.
Pete Connors says the Transport Agency will also ensure the alternative route through Lewis Pass is well maintained for traffic over the next year. ANZ bank staff evacuated their Tory Street offices in central Wellington today over fears that concrete panelling on the building could fall off. The Wellington City Council has put up a temporary cordon across Foresters Lane, and it's considering whether it will need to extend it to include surrounding businesses with fire escapes that lead into the lane. Engineers have told the council there are problems with the fastenings attaching the large concrete panels to the building. The council says temporary work to secure the panels has already begun, and firm decisions on the cordons should be made within the next couple of hours. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Murray McCully, will quit Parliament at next year's election. He's already announced he wouldn't be contesting his East Coast Bay seat he's held since 1987. Murray McCully is the third minister this week to announce their imminent departure. He says in the light of the upcoming cabinet reshuffle, he wanted to be clear that he would not be a nominee for the National Party list. But unlike Sam Lotuenga and Craig Foss, Mr McCully is leaving it up to the Prime Minister, Bill English, whether or not he will be a minister after this weekend's reshuffle. Mr McCully is at the United Nations in New York as New Zealand's term on the Security Council draws to a close at the end of the year. A reported new deal to evacuate civilians and rebel fighters from the last rebel-held enclave in Aleppo is due to take effect this evening. The first agreement to evacuate civilians fell apart within hours last night after objections from Iran and Syria. The BBC's Lise Doucette reports.
The apparent breakthrough suggests that the demands of major players who raised objections have now been met. So the buses and ambulances which were turned away will now make another effort to rescue the ill and the injured, to bring out the fighters and their families. They'll be sent to another area under opposition control where they'll continue their fight. But their departure will send the strongest of signals that the 4-year-long battle for Aleppo is drawing to a close.
Lise Doucette reporting. An Auckland business leader says the city's reputation is being hurt by huge airport traffic delays and a new task force won't fix them. The task force is a joint effort by Auckland Airport, Auckland Transport and the New Zealand Transport Agency to try to stop crippling traffic jams in the lead-up to the peak Christmas period. The group has already changed roundabout and lane setups and altered traffic light timing. But the Chief Executive of the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, Michael Barnett, says these are not serious solutions. He says long-term fixes are needed, such as widening the main roads to the airport. Mr Barnett says it took him 2 hours to get to the airport from the city last week, a trip that would take about 35 minutes off-peak. He says such experiences call Auckland's claim to be the world's most livable city into question. Scott Watson has been denied parole for a second time and told he has a lot more work to do before he'll be released from prison. Watson is serving a life sentence for the killing of Olivia Hope and Ben Smart on New Year's Day in 1998. Maya Burry reports.
In a decision released today, the parole board said Watson had considerably more work to do before he will no longer pose an undue risk. It said an experienced corrections officer who had known Watson for most of his sentence noted his split personalities and said Watson could either be happy-go-lucky or very manipulative and very untrusting. The board said the person who killed Ms. Hope and Mr. Smart was a cold-blooded killer, and Watson had been found to be that man beyond reasonable doubt. The board says Watson won't be able to seek another hearing until 2020. This is Maya Burry.
It's 6:05. To sport, the All Blacks hooker Dane Coles believes it'll be hard to edge out his Hurricane and All Blacks teammate Beauden Barrett for the top award at tonight's New Zealand Rugby Awards in Auckland. Hooker Coles, First Five Barrett and lock Sam Whitelock are in line for the top prize, the Kel Tremaine Trophy. Coles's deed for the Hurricanes and All Blacks saw him named Wellingtonian of the Year last month, though he says it will be tough to pip Barrett, the World Rugby Player of the Year.
It would be nice, mate, but I don't think he's had it, like I said, he's had an unreal year and he fully deserves, the World Player, and I'm pretty sure we'll be taking out the main one tonight.
Coles is also a contender for Māori Player of the Year, while Barrett is also up for Super Rugby Player of the Year. The Australian cricketers have raced to 74 for 1 on the first day of the opening test against Pakistan in Brisbane. Pakistan's fast bowler Mohammad Amir just picked up the wicket of Australian opener David Warner for 32. Chelsea have maintained their stranglehold on the English football's Premier League, beating Sunderland 1-0 to move 6 points clear of the top of the table. Liverpool climbed to second with a 3-0 win over Middlesbrough, while Manchester City remained fourth with a 2-0 win over Watford. Manchester United have had a 2-1 win at Crystal Palace, while Tottenham beat Hull 3-0. West Ham are out of the relegation zone with a 1-0 win over Burnley. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, the art of fakes, or at least their artistic merit. Felicity Strong asks whether authenticity is overrated. Given the selfie stick hordes that mob the Mona Lisa and our ever-improving ability to make copies of the great masters, what matters most, the medium or its message? And Whātua Hodali joins us from Bethlehem, where they are gearing up for Christmas. Of course, on Nights from afternoon news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula and the Bay of Plenty mostly fine, however a period of rain this evening. Waikato to Manawatu, including the central high country, rain spreading north this afternoon and evening, then clearing tonight and becoming mostly fine. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, areas of cloud with a few spots of evening rain, fine tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, Wellington and Wairarapa becoming fine this afternoon. Northwest gales in exposed places easing before dawn. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury mostly fine, but the odd shower south of Rangiora today. Bulletu, Fiordland, also Otago and Southland. Scattered showers, some heavy with hail and possible squally thunderstorms in the west and the far south today. Showers easing in Fiordland tomorrow but clearing elsewhere. And the Chatham Islands rain developing this afternoon, then easing to showers tomorrow. It's coming up to 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina. The ceasefire deal allowing civilians to evacuate from Aleppo is beginning about now, or it should be. We'll go there shortly to see if it is happening and what the latest is. But first to Wellington, ANZ staff have evacuated their offices in the central city location of Tory Street over fears that concrete panelling on the building could fall off. The Wellington City Council has put up a temporary cordon across Foresters Lane and it's considering whether it will need to extend it to include surrounding businesses with fire escapes that lead into the lane. Our reporter Michael Kropp is outside the building and is joining us live via Skype. Hi Michael, what's the latest?
Hi there, John. Well, the latest is that they are waiting to hear back from engineers about just how bad this is, about how much of a concern this is. So what they're concerned about is really whether the facade could fail in another decent earthquake. Talking to the council, they said they're worried about the fasteners that attach some of the concrete panelling to the building. Now, it's quite a large building. It's at 4 or 5 stories, I think. And so they've cordoned off, not the entrance to the building, but effectively a couple of metres out from the building as you walk around it. So talking with some of the engineers just as I arrived, they said they have to wait for the next bit of information. And of course, we're asking ANZ, when did they know about this? Asking the council, when did they know about this? Because, it's a month on from the earthquake now, and it seems quite late to find this sort of stuff out.
Yeah, it certainly does. We'd love to hear the answers to those questions. Just before you go, Michael, and thank you for being there, how close are you to the Reading Cinema car park and those apartments that have suffered a similar fate in terms of being closed off?
I'm actually really close. Look, I can press this button, hopefully, and turn the camera around. So that intersection just ahead of us is where the cordon begins for the Reading Cinema car park. I was down there earlier today while some people were able to just pop in, get their things, get their goldfish. And it's just mind-boggling that still a month out, they're finding new problems that were caused by this earthquake.
Yeah, extraordinary. Funny that all of those the buildings are quite close together on Tory Street. Maybe the land is soft underneath there or something. I think there's a lot of reclaimed land around that part of Wellington, isn't there? Hey, just before you go, it must have been a very moving scene to see that owner reunited with the goldfish, Michael.
The most moving scene I've seen in a while.
Michael Crop, live from Tory Street in Wellington. Thank you, Michael. It is 6:10. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Well, it's meant to start about now, the ceasefire allowing civilians to evacuate from Aleppo. Of course, we've had these conversations before. We've heard about these ceasefires before, and they simply haven't happened. Rebel groups in Aleppo say the deal to evacuate civilians and fighters is now back on track, and evacuations are due to begin. Fighter jets resumed deadly air raids in the eastern part of the Syrian city overnight, with each side blaming the other for the resumption of fighting after the last so-called ceasefire. And the UN has warned the Syrian government forces have almost certainly violated international law with their renewed bombardment of rebel-held areas of Aleppo. Not that the Syrian government forces are remotely worried by what the UN is saying. The ABC's Thomas Ority reports.
Hundreds of Syrian and Turkish demonstrators have gathered in protest on the streets of Istanbul. 19-year-old Nourjada from Syria is one of them.
Because people in Halep in Syria are being killed and burning, and they are, it's just unbelievable what's happening there. No one can just imagine. It's killing everywhere. Bashar al-Assad and Iran and Russia are killing people and burning them.
Today, Srebrenica, today, Aleppo. Today, Aleppo.
The ceasefire was supposed to stop the bloodbath in Aleppo, but instead fighting broke out. And the developments were enough to mobilise people around the world. In the Bosnian capital, Sarajevo, up to 1,000 people from the Muslim, Catholic, Orthodox Christian and Jewish communities stood in solidarity, reflecting on their own conflict in the 1990s, which left thousands of people dead. It is very important that we send a message from here today, says a representative from Bosnia's Catholic community, Franjo Topic. There is no such thing as a holy war, there is only holy peace. We can never allow conflicts to be solved by war. Rupert Colville is a spokesman for the UN Human Rights Office.
I think when you see this sort of intensity and bombardment into this small area in which thousands and thousands of civilians are packed, it's almost certainly a violation of international law and most probably war crimes that are being committed, because you cannot possibly distinguish between civilians and fighters in this way and under these circumstances when they're all packed in so close together.
Rebel officials say they've now agreed and the Aleppo deal can go ahead as planned. But there's still confusion. Government sources say 15,000 people will be evacuated from the northwestern towns, but rebel officials say only the wounded will be allowed to leave. Regardless, Red Cross spokesman Ralph El Haj has issued a stern warning about the consequences if the fighting resumes.
Any battle that might, or if it goes on now with this very limited space, will most probably cause huge damage in human loss. And that is something we have seen way too much.
And the international pressure is mounting. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest says the Syrian government has crossed all the lines in pursuit of its goals.
I think every American and every human being is deeply troubled by the violence and innocent loss of life that we see inside of Syria. It's heartbreaking. It's tragic when you see a government commit atrocities against its own people using the military might of the state. That is a failed government. That is a failed state.
That report from the ABC. Once again, those evacuations are due to begin about now. Poor outings at the 2016 Olympics have proven costly for the All Black Sevens team. That's the men's, New Zealand cycling, football, triathlon and swimming organisations. High Performance Sport New Zealand has released its funding for next year and will hand out $35 million in government grants. There were some winners. Yachting New Zealand, athletics and canoe racing have all received a boost in funding over the next 2 years. Matt Chatterton breaks down the winners and the losers in this funding round.
New Zealand scaled the highest highs in Rio.
Gold in Rio to the New Zealanders. That is a huge moment for Burling and Took, names for the future.
And some of the lowest lows.
It's Japan that sets the Olympic men's sevens alight with a 14-12 win over New Zealand.
New Zealand exceeded expectations with a record 18-medal haul in Rio. However, a number of sports underperformed on their targets. None more so than cycling and swimming. Both sports have suffered a substantial cut in funding for next year. Cycling, one of High Performance Sport New Zealand's leading targeted sports, returned just one medal in Rio, and its funding has been cut by $500,000 to $4.2 million. Swimming didn't win any medals and has lost $400,000, dropping to $900,000. Swimming New Zealand is effectively on a final funding warning in the wake of disappointing performances at the Rio Olympics. The chief executive of High Performance Sport New Zealand, Alex Bauman, concedes swimming could ultimately see its $900,000 disappear.
They just haven't performed. The challenge is that we do still see potential. Swimming is important to us, but ultimately, you only have a certain amount of investment, and you have to really take a look at what goals you have, and you have to have a top-down approach. So that may be a possibility, but we're hopeful that they're on the right track.
Swimming New Zealand refused to comment following today's announcement, but in a statement said it was seeking clarification from High Performance Sport New Zealand over its funding allocation. Cycling New Zealand, however, is taking a more pragmatic approach to its cut. Chief Executive Andrew Matheson says he was expecting a bigger cut than $500,000.
There certainly won't be any frills in our program, that's for sure. But as long as we're really clear on the athletes we want to work with, really focusing on the events that we're targeting and make sure that we stretch every dollar as far as it can. For the next 2 years, we believe it won't affect us. Certainly, we will need that increase in 2019. Otherwise, we will start to, have some notable impacts on Tokyo.
There were other losers as well. The All Black Sevens team lost $300,000 after failing to make it past the quarterfinals in Rio, while Triathlon New Zealand will now get $750,000 in 2017 compared to $1.25 million this year. For every loser in sport, there is a winner though. The biggest this year is athletics. Athletics won 4 of New Zealand's 18 medals, 3 bronze and 1 silver. Not only has Athletics New Zealand received a $375,000 increase for next year, it's now a Tier 1 sport alongside cycling, rowing and yachting. Athletics New Zealand High Performance Director Scott Goodman says the increase is a result of hard work from both athletes and those around them, and believes it'll lead to more Olympic medals in Tokyo in 2020.
I think our bureaucratic target would be to be at 3 or more, and internally we set ourselves some higher, more ambitious targets. So I might be dreaming, but I'd like to get up to 5 or 6 medals.
Canoe racing has also received an increase, $325,000 for next year, following Lisa Carrington's success this year, and after winning 21 medals in Rio, Paralympics New Zealand also received a boost in funding from $2.25 million to $2.6 million. For Checkpoint, call Matt Chatterton, 10A.
It's 18 minutes past 6. We've been running an experiment tonight about traffic to and from Auckland Airport. We're going to take a live shot now from our car as Alex Ashton drives back. He's making good progress. This is Manukau Road, right, in Epsom. But he left at 1:45, so this is Yeah, 5:42. So in fact, this is 35 minutes. It's taken 35 minutes. So it's taken him longer to get halfway back, or about the same amount of time to get halfway back as it did to get all the way there. We have a listener, Michael Smythe, who emailed us at 5:19 and said, John, it won't be a bad run out to the airport, but it will be a slow run back. Michael, we don't know who you are, but you know Auckland traffic to PhD level, brother. So Alex is making slow progress back, although not having a bad run at the moment if you're watching, much slower than on the way out to the airport. That is a live shot from our car, right in New Zealand, the modern world. A woman has given birth, speaking of the modern world, in London using ovarian tissue which was frozen when she was just 9 years old and she had to undergo chemotherapy. It's thought to be the first time in the world that doctors have successfully restored fertility with an ovary frozen before the onset of puberty. The BBC's Fergus Walsh has the details.
Every baby is special, but this little boy really is astonishing because he is the result of frozen ovarian tissue taken from his mum when she was just 9. Against the odds, Moza has become a mother.
It's something miracle that I have my baby now, because it was so long January that we are waiting for this nice result.
There we go. As a child, Moza, who's from Dubai, had a serious blood disorder. She needed a bone marrow transplant, which would make her infertile. So prior to chemotherapy, she had her right ovary removed. Slices of ovarian tissue were taken, each containing follicles with immature eggs, which were frozen. 2 years ago, 4 were stitched onto her failed left ovary in transplant surgery in Denmark. Within months, she began ovulating and her premature menopause was reversed. Eggs were retrieved and used in IVF treatment.
Good morning, Mummy. Good morning.
Her doctor at the private Portland Hospital in London says this is a major advance in safeguarding women's fertility.
I'm absolutely overjoyed for this patient. It offers fantastic hope for a lot of children around the world who need life-threatening treatments for cancer or other major illnesses.
These are cow ovaries, but it's the same process involved in preparing human tissue for freezing.
We believe there are thousands of cases in storage across the world for tissue that has been preserved for young girls and young women who are likely to have lost their fertility as a result of chemotherapy treatment or radiation treatment.
When Moza had her ovarian tissue frozen in a tank of liquid nitrogen like this 15 years ago, when she was just 9 years old, it was a rare and pioneering procedure. Back then, some scientists thought the tissue would perish long before she'd want to start a family. Well, now she's shown what's possible and given hope to thousands. What message does your baby son send to young girls who may be going through cancer treatment now?
There is another chance and there is another hope, because my hope it was I have a nice child like this baby.
Moza says she hopes to have another child and is looking forward to going home to Dubai as soon as her son is old enough to fly.
We should say, I've just, of course, realised that that is the Michael Smythe, the one and only. Very clever Michael Smythe, who also understands Auckland traffic like the palm of his hand. Right. Māori Party co-leaders raised the bar in Parliament's debating chamber last night with a welcome departure from the usual cornball Christmas stunts. A rendition of Santa Baby by Marama Fox with her co-leader Te Ururoa Flavel playing a mean ukulele has gone global, with people tweeting it's the best thing they've seen in Parliament and that Marama has a beautiful voice. It's really captivating people abroad. So good was their performance it even made Jerry Brownlee smile. Still reeling from the highs of her parliamentary gig the night before, Marama Fox rocked up to our studio in Wellington earlier today with a message, a Christmas message, and she came dressed for the occasion too with a fox cap and lots of fox stuff, which she'll show us.
Tururoa Flavel bought me this when he was in the States, which I was very happy about, and I wear it all the time around Parliament, it's a thing. And I also, over in my ears, I don't know if you can see them, but I got fox earrings today from one of our staff. I'm just a bit rapt about that.
You look the part. You were fantastic singing in Parliament last night, and I thought, great voice, Marama. Where's that from?
Talking too much, being out too late, singing too much on the karaoke, and I end up with a husky bit of a drool. So, singing is part of who we are, and it always makes me feel good and lifts us up. But as Māori, you know what, we've grown up singing at tangi, singing at the marae, singing for entertainment. It's part of just the way we keep each other happy. And so in Parliament, there's a lot of doom and gloom sometimes, and there's a true message behind the song, but we just wanted to enlighten everybody with a bit of vibrancy, and then bang home the message while everyone's smiling. They don't even know that we've just banged home a message.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously part of the message was Vote Māori Party. Setting that part aside, what else were you trying to get across?
That we're coming up to Christmas right now. There are people who are homeless. I don't know where they're going to have Christmas. I don't know if they're going to be in their car. Are they going to go to whānau house? Are they going to be alone? You know, every year at Christmas, our family used to go down to the Room at the Inn Christmas in Masterton Town Hall and do Christmas with the community. And that's not just for people who are poor, just people who might be alone or who might want to share Christmas with others. So we'd go down and sing for entertainment during the dinner at the Christmas in the Inn. But also the other message was about our children. You know, our children are the most important things for our future. If we don't get it right now, they are the beneficiaries of the decisions that we make. So, hello, Hobson's Pledge. We're not bad guys. You're allowed to be different and still be one. That's all I'm saying.
And you now, important messages, and I don't want to shy away from them at all, but I also know you've got a plane to catch, and because you are on a bit of a singing roll,
I do.
Are you going to sing us a special Checkpoint Christmas song?
I do have a special Checkpoint Christmas song, and I've just dialed it up on my phone, so I've got the lyrics. It's called Dial a Lyric, and this is just for our listeners, for your listeners who love you very much, by the way. And so we're just going to sing Some Bells Will Be Ringing, if that's okay. I'm just going to go a cappella. No tutor here with the ukulele today.
He's good on the uke though, wasn't he? I was very impressed. Ladies and gentlemen, Marama Fox, co-leader of the Māori Party, with a very special Christmas tune from her to you.
Thank you. And you know what? This is dedicated to the people who are out there and who are alone. Come home for Christmas. All right, lyrics. And bells will be ringing, the glad, glad news. Oh, what a Christmas to have the blues. My baby's gone, I have no friends to wish me greetings once again. Oh, choirs will be singing, oh, silent night, those Christmas carols by candlelight. Please come home for Christmas, please come home for Christmas, if not for Christmas, by New Year's night. Friends and relations send salutations, just as sure as the stars shine above. Oh, this is Christmas, Christmas, my dear, the time of year to be with the one you love. And then won't you tell me you'll never more roam? Christmas and New Year will find you at home. There'll be no more sorrow, no grief or pain. 'Cause I'll be happy that it's Christmas time again. Oh, then won't you tell me you'll never, never roam? Christmas and New Year will find you at home. There'll be no more sorrow, no grief or pain. 'Cause I'll be happy that it's Christmas once again. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. Christmas to you, Marama. Thank you so much.
And Merry Christmas to you and to everybody who's listening. Don't be alone at Christmas. Go and knock on your neighbour's door. Go and see your family. Put aside all the hurts that and all the words that you might have said to one another that annoys you while you're not together. And go and have Christmas with the ones you love. Merry Christmas.
Marama Fox, Māori Party co-leader, who was belting that out in the middle of our Wellington newsroom, unaccompanied by any of the reporters who were sitting near her and could have joined in at any stage. Just before we go, lots of people contacting us and saying the live shot, lots of people are watching now on Freeview, and the live shot showed the boys coming back from the airport on the T3 lane, and people are saying, well, that's cheating. Look, it's not, because there was 3 of them in the car. There was Alex, who's driving, Bradley, who's filming it, and Zach, our new reporter, who just went along for the ride, we think. But also, you make a good point, actually, most people who come in from the airport aren't in the T3 lane, so they're doing better than they might otherwise have been doing. Oh, the T3's only 4 or 6, Pip says. Boy, Auckland transport is complex. Night, everyone.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Transport Agency says rebuilding the coastal Kaikoura route will be challenging and require several hundred workers, but it's confident the job can be done within the next 12 months. ANZ Bank staff have evacuated their building in Tory Street in central Wellington over fears concrete panelling could fall off. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Murray McCulley, will quit Parliament at next year's election. And an Auckland business leader says the city's reputation is being hurt by huge airport traffic delays. Our next news and weather is at 7.
This week's New Horizons looks at singer-songwriter Gillian Welch. I'll be playing her new official bootleg of rescued songs from studio sessions of 20 years ago, as well as other samplings on the side.